Let's look at installing Kali Linux. Um, Kali is a Linux distribution that has been optimized for various security type operations, and it is crammed full of a number of very interesting tools. And it's a good thing to know if you're in the security business in general. So I just did a Google search on Kali Linux and was directed to kali.org. If you click on downloads, there's a big list here of various various distributions. Now, if you want to install um, in essence, this would be like it's an ISO file, is what it is. You could download the ISO and then with the proper software turn it into a bootable DVD that you could install directly if you have a machine sitting around that you're not doing anything with. Uh, we're going to, or I'm going to advocate that you use VMware, which is, VMware Workstation 14, which is virtualization software. And if you've never dealt with virtualization software, it allows you to run other operating systems inside of your existing operating system. So these other operating systems are referred to as guest operating systems. It works pretty well. My point was, if you want to use VMware, you could also download, like for example, this particular distribution here, the ISO file, and VMware will allow you to install directly from an ISO. Now, I've had a little trouble with some of the installations of Kali, this version of Kali, and Workstation 14. So let me go on and get that started. So Workstation Pro. I've had a little problem with that. So what I've done is, if you go on down here, there's a link here to images that have already been installed on Workstation for VMware, and then basically zipped up, made available. So if you download this, if you follow that link, you just go over here, and I most likely, if you got a newer computer, you're going to want the 64-bit. Now this is compressed, so you're going to need some sort of software that understands how to decompress or uncompress a zipped up file. And the reason is, I think this one is about, I can't remember how big it really was. I want to say 2.9 gigabytes. And when you uncompress it, it winds up to be over 9 gigabytes. So it's a pretty big file, and it's going to take it a while to download. It's going to take it a while to unzip it. So keep those things in mind. So anyway, what I've done for the VMware image is I've downloaded it and then unzipped it. So I've already got this on the computer I'm working on here, which is just another one of the computers in my lab. And I'm actually remoting into this right now from a different computer, my actual office desktop. So if you look inside of this uncompressed file, you can, I don't know why we have such a hard time with, all I want is to see the details. You'll see that the what you download from Offensive Security, the VMware image is already set up. These are most likely hard disk. I usually put mine, if I'm doing this myself, I put them into one big one. Uh, but the point is here, this virtual machine, and we're going to have this running here in just a few seconds, minutes. Uh, this is just a collection of files. So we're going to run this as a guest operating system inside the Windows 7 operating system that's running on this computer in my lab. So it's just a bunch of files. Just wanted to show you that. So now I'm going to go back to VMware, and I've got some existing virtual machines over here, so don't worry about those. If you install this at home, you're not going to have that problem. Here's your options. If you click on the Home tab, your options are to create a new virtual machine. This is what you would use if you download the ISO file and want to install from that. So if you want to try that, good luck. Usually works. I've had some trouble, as I pointed out, some trouble with VMware Workstation 14 and this release of Kali Linux. I've also got it to work on other computers, so who knows why these things work or don't work. The option I'm going to use here is to open an existing virtual machine. So I'm going to click on that. And now we just need to go look around and find that file I was showing you a while ago, and I know where it's at. I parked it under Downloads and then Kali Linux 2018. Now this is the actual folder we were looking at a while ago. So if you open that up, you're shown a VMX file. So that's all you need to link to. And give it a second. So here we are. Now this is where you're going to start up your virtual machine. And there's some interesting information there. But notice there's an option here. It says power on this virtual machine. Same thing right up here. And let me show you a different option here. Notice here we've also got a suspend or a shutdown. Really, properly, you should shut down the operating system from within the operating system itself. Sometimes you run into trouble and you've got to shut it down manually from the outside. It's best to do it from inside the operating system. This suspend guest is an interesting, a very interesting feature. It basically lets you save where you are, and then you can go on and do something else and come back and restart it. You start it back up, and you're right where you left off. That's a really it's a really nice feature, and it's one of the advantages of virtualization. An even bigger advantage to virtualization, and you may not be able to see this due to where I'm minimize this briefly, where I'm recording on the screen here. I was right here, and that's where I clicked on a while ago. If you go to VM and go to snapshot, you can actually take a snapshot of a virtual machine, and this allows you to revert to a previous known point. Now this is really interesting. If you're for example, if you're testing exploits against a target, this lets you reset the target, and we're going to do that, by the way, later on in the class. So taking snapshots are a really interesting thing, nice feature. So let's go on and start this up. So just click on power on. Now remember, well, let's deal with this first. VMware has realized that this machine might have been moved or copied. I think what it does here is when you do the installation, the VMware assigns a MAC address to the virtual network adapter. Of course, you could have more than one inside of this virtual machine, and it realizes when you put it on a different in a different installation of VMware Workstation that it has been moved or copied. So it tells you here, if you don't know whether it's been moved or copied, say you copied it. And that's usually works pretty well. Just click on I copied it. And it's going to generate another MAC address so that um, it's kind of guaranteed to be unique on across other installations. So we're booting up, and if you've never fooled with Linux, you should do whatever you have to do to get some experience with this. It is a required class in the security track, or the security uh, option. I think we call them tracks now. So this is Linux booting up, and if you're having trouble with your Linux, this file, all this here is actually stored in a file. And if I thought about it a few minutes, I could tell you where it was at. I could find it. I just can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's in there. And every once in a while, if you're troubleshooting a Linux installation, it's good to go look at that file and see what has happened. Now, you may or may not run into this trouble of where your mouse is. Like right now, I can see my mouse pointer's out here somewhere. If I click in here, sometimes I can't get out. Now this time I'm not having any trouble because I think probably what's happened here, there's something called the VMware tools that have already been installed inside of here. But if your mouse gets trapped in here, you can hold down the Control and Alt keys, and it will release. You can see how it changes. You know, now the focus is inside this virtual machine. Now it does change when you go out, but if I do Control and Alt right here, it changes immediately. So if you get hung, do a Control and Alt. You can also do a Control Alt Delete, and that will toggle you in and out of full screen mode. Now I might be having some issues here with full screen mode, so let's don't play with that very much. And let's see if we can get logged in here before I mess up too many things. Log in as root, R-O-O-T. This is the administrator's account in Linux. And click next, and the password for this is root spelled backwards. Tor, T-O-O-R. So click sign in. And give it a few moments. While it gets itself together here. Now what you see here is the graphical version of Kali Linux, and a lot of the times you're going to be wanting to run various things in a terminal, or a lot of the things that you're going to use are already on your start menu here. I found that the terminal is very handy, so I always make sure I know where I can get to that as quickly as possible. Now let's see here. If you do ifconfig, this tells you something about your network interfaces. This is the only one we have right now. This is the Ethernet 0. And this is the number, the IP number of this particular box, this particular installation of Kali Linux. And it got this from a virtual DHCP server that's running as part of VMware Workstation. So your number is going to be different. Well, it might be the same, but it's probably going to be different, and that's okay. I don't know, this might or might not become an issue later, that you might need to know something about this. But at this point we have a functioning Kali Linux installation, and for the time being I'm just going to suspend it, and there's several instructions in the book that use Kali Linux, and with this you should have no trouble running those doing those lab exercises. I would caution you to refer to your the syllabus for this class. I warn you, don't target any other, well, with my computers, don't target any other IP numbers other than what you're told to in those lab exercises. I don't really want the FBI or the CIA or the anybody else to come knocking on my door. So we'll pick up here later. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to suspend the guest. This will just put this to sleep right where it's at right now. And several labs in the book that we're going to use this, and it's a lot of fun. Just be careful.